The angel Sariel. It's been a weird experience. One thing I've learnt is angels aren't as clear-cut, and well, being human, I'm not keen on how ambiguous Sariel has been in this matter. Is that how angels really are? A quote from Jim Essel from Fragrance of Paradise. For my first foray into divulging on the demonic and angelic characters that enter into my Beyond the Veil universe, I chose probably the most awkward character in ways of categorizing. Whether it's confusing over the variations of the name, or where it lands within text where the angel is named, there is only one thing that is certain of Sariel. They were an angel. Now, first of all, with regards to descriptions of gender, i.e. he, she, they, regarding the angelic beings, the texts tend to refer to them as male, as in using the he pronoun, and for discussing the sources, I will use whatever pronouns are in the sources. However, for my interpretation in my universe, I will most often refer in the plural, unless certain sexual characteristics are specifically chosen, or their role in the story is in a specific gender guise. So, Sariel's name means God's prince, or prince of God, and his name has many variations where it appears in text from Suriel, Suruel, Suriyel, Seriel, Sauriel, Sarakiel, Sarakiel, Suriyel, Souriel, and Surufel. In some texts, these spelling and name variants belong to other angels, but often Sariel and Suriel are the most commonly used, with Suriel being an archangel venerated in Judaism and Coptic Orthodox Church. In the Coptic Orthodox Church, he is even commemorated on the 27th of Tobi for their calendar. Now, lore-wise, this angel's name appears in the Dead Sea Scrolls, in the Book of Enoch, in Gnosticism, and in Kabbalistic lore. In all of these texts he is an angel, but we'll discuss first his position in the Book of Enoch, which is where the big confusion over Sariel's position turns up. The Book of Enoch is the source of the questions surrounding Sariel's status, namely because he is described as one of the Watchers. In this book he is claimed as one of the leaders of this group that lusted over women that descended to Mount Hermon in the time of Jared, to acquire wives and lead men astray. These Watchers are said to happen after the fall, but are the next group of angels to get booted out of heaven. It is stated that Sariel is the angel that teaches men the movements and ways of the moon. But then Enoch seems to contradict this, later claiming in Book 2 that Sariel, also called Samuel in some translations, is one of the angels that helped take Enoch up to God. In Book 1 it also says that Saraqael, one of the name variants, is one of the holy angels that watch over those spirits that commit sin when only in spirit. This has led to some interpretations of Sariel as the guardian angel of fallen angels, or angels that have been cast down, actually watching them. In Enoch Book 1, we also hear about Suriel, another spelling variant, as one of the angels in charge of guarding like Michael and Gabriel, which is also agreed as Sariel's job in one of the Dead Sea Scrolls titled War of the Sons of Light Against Darkness. In that, like Michael and Gabriel, his name should be placed upon shields to help protect. Now, in a 6th century text translated from Arabic entitled Conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan, Sariel, as Suriel, is one of 2 angels that take Adam and Eve from a high mountain safely to a so-called cave of treasures. In the Ladder of Jacob, Sariel is said to have explained the dream to Jacob. Then in other later texts, such as the Liber Geratus, by Honorius of Thebes, we hear of Sariel's position as the angel of the 8th month, or in some other texts, the 10th month. But modern texts tend to keep the spelling of Sariel, S-A-R-I-E-L, to Enoch's Watchers, and others still cover this paradox of this angel. For example, Gustav Davidson's A Dictionary of Angels, including the fallen angels, states, one of the 7 archangels originally listed in the Enoch books as Sarakiel, and differentiated from Uriel. Sariel is cited as both a holy angel and a fallen one. In occultism, he is one of the 9 angels of the summer equinox. He governs the zodiacal sign of the ram. In addition, he teaches the course of the moon, which at one time was a forbidden knowledge. The confliction, of course, is that Sariel is teaching what he should not. A watcher, and is still an archangel, is something a lot of modern writers on angels and demons tend to bounce between or note, with most just accepting that the sources could be both right. Michel Bellinger in the Dictionary of Demons gives more detail of other texts that lock Sariel as a demon. One of the fallen angels mentioned in the Book of Enoch. As one of the Watchers, Sariel was entrusted with knowledge of the phases of the moon. When he joined the other fallen Watchers to take a wife from the daughters of men, he taught this forbidden knowledge. According to the Ars Ferrugia, apologies for my pronunciation on that, Sariel is a night demon who serves the infernal king Azeliel, a ruler in the court of the east. In this text, Sariel holds the rank of chief president. He has 30 principal spirits who serve him with another 20. Sariel appears again in the Ars Ferrugia, under the rule of the demon Gediel. Here Sariel is ranked as a duke and is said to rule by day. Apologies for my pronunciation. As can be seen, later sources follow him as a watcher, thereby a fallen and thereby demonic in manner. This text is of course discussing demons, but it's interesting how Sariel is a being that serves greater demons and is certainly fallen for being a watcher. I agree that it is conflicting, and really my thoughts are regarding the various spellings of the name, and the sounds too. As you've noticed as I've read, I use the spelling Sariel and pronounce it Seriel, but other texts pronounce it as Suriel. And when I was initially researching, I found one website mixing up Sariel with Sauriel. So, with your own interpretations of this angel, and fallen or not, no one said he isn't an angel. It's up to you. Now, here's how the character of Seriel exists within the Beyond the Veil universe, particularly where he features in my story Fragrance of Paradise. For this area, I will present and discuss Seriel in the form of a character profile. So, name, Sariel. Position is good neutral. Story featured in Fragrance of Paradise. Role, father figure for the main character, Nilufer. Gender, he chooses to appear as male, and that seems to be something characteristic of the Watchers. Description, wears grey robes to cover all limbs save his hands and feet. His feet wear sandals, and his skin is dark but covered in the paler pink patches of the skin mutation vitiligo. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. He also bears pock scars upon his cheeks and was once viewed as a wandering leper. Realm, Earth. He's in the Veil and beyond it. Abilities, can read the phases of the moon and create doors using his book that views Earth from space to step into any room if he is requested to give aid. His master, the Almighty, but he is a fallen. Personality, a little vacuous, he is guarded on what he says but tries to be as helpful as possible without being too helpful and getting himself into more trouble. Once he was like a new teacher, fresh and eager to share his knowledge without realising the consequences, and he was easily led by his heart and forgot the reason his former companions became fallen. He feels great guilt and shame for choosing a gender in the end and disobeying God. For this he keeps himself separate from others and feels his loneliness is his eternal penance. Relations. Azazel. As one of his fellow watchers, at first Sariel felt kinship towards Azazel, but when it was clear his motives were not as pure as they appeared, Sariel distanced himself from Azazel, and thankfully, because of this, he did not suffer the same fate and will never have to step into hell. Sarakael, another watcher and the one to convince Sariel to join them and visit Earth to try and aid their children, but just like the others, Sarakael lusted, although he maintained more wisdom and was able to keep Sariel from leaving them by encouraging his desire to teach. Uriel, his brother of the cloud. Sariel and Uriel were created from not only the same essence as all angels, but the same port of balance. Uriel is fiery and powerful and bold. Sariel is his brother, who is calmer, cooler, and genteel. Uriel and Sariel still get along, however, despite what happened to him, and Uriel comes to see his brother in the desert from time to time to give him hope that one day he might achieve forgiveness or at least an end. Andreophus, once an angel he would watch from afar and wish to help in her arts creating birds. When Andreophus dared to choose a female form and join Lucifer's army, she approached Sariel to choose gender and be her lover. He refused gender but refused to take part in the war, and she stole a kiss from him. Then, when she fell, she produced a child just before she fell into hell, a daughter, a fairy, which Sariel worried was born from their kiss. Nilufer, the potential daughter of Sariel and Andreophus. She was the reason he descended with the other Watchers to help teach her how to best help the humans and win the Almighty's favour. However, he became aware that she could not be his daughter, and so he took her on as his favourite student, and helped her as much as he could, though he could never tell her if he was her father or not. His history. Born like all angels from the thoughts of the Almighty when it first decided upon possibility, Sariel was born of the same balance as Uriel, being born early enough to gain the title of an archangel. Sariel's duty was to guard the knowledge of the moon and its effects upon the earth. He spent his time alongside his friend Sarakael, who would work on the other things but often talked to Sariel on the beauty of the moon under different shadows. But Sariel would muse that to him, the various wings of the birds on earth that Andreophus worked with made him thoughtful of beauty. It was clear he wished to make more friendship with a fellow angel, but he was never so bold to do so. When Lucifer made their defiance against the Almighty in creating awareness amongst the angels of gender, Sariel was fascinated by the thoughts and whispers that ran through heaven whilst Lucifer stepped into the world and awoke the angels of death by accident. During this time, Belial, Beelzebub, Astaroth, and Lucifer's other good friends all began to spread the thoughts of what was so wrong with gender when all the living things could potentially have it and the Almighty had granted it to their greatest work. Sariel did not listen to these ideas and remained agender. When Andreophus appeared before him in a feminine form, and tried to entice him, informing him that gender permitted a greater understanding of beauty and how truly unique all angels were from each other, and from the Almighty. Sariel refused gender and was instead given a kiss as thanks for promising he would not disavow them as angels for choosing gender. This proved hazardous. A war occurred once Lucifer had returned. Sariel found himself unable to battle his brothers and sat with various others on the sidelines and staring out at the war and praying for peace. Instead, Michael won the battle and Lucifer and their followers were literally kicked down to earth. But as it happened, those demons to take female form suddenly gave birth as they fell. Some birthed whilst still in sight of heaven, producing them as Stemma, and the others whilst within sight of earth, producing daughters in the form of Peri and sons in the Dijin. Of those to birth was Androphus, and Sariel was worried that the Peri she produced was his daughter. Sariel returned to his duties of guarding the moon, but would use the Book of the Moon to help keep an eye on the children, and some would frolic with the spawn of Lilith and Samael, rather than with their own fellows or with the humans. Seeing this, and knowing that Adam and Eve were amongst the world teaching of life, death, and faith, Sariel began to ask of the potential of the Peri and the Dijin to aid in man's development, and to do so he sought out the Satanael, the angel of adversary and brother to Lucifer, who gladly went to try and start teaching the Dijin to test faith, though some were very easily corrupted by the vices of the Lilin. Luckily, the Almighty decided that 200 of the neutral angels would go forth to help protect the humans and guide their faith, but were not to fall to vice or share their secrets, and in doing so they could teach the Peri to become weeping angels, in need of saving a human soul, so they could join their fathers in heaven upon their end. Sariel was convinced by Cockabeel that this was the best way he could help, and once on earth they took the guises of men, no women, and lived calmly and happily amongst the daughters of Adam, the Dijin and the Peri. At least, for the first year they were all well behaved, but then one of the angels taught the humans how to make alcohol, another taught them to dance, and though these were not forbidden, combined they seemed to make strange things happen. Suriel learnt that Azazel was courting these humans, and even impregnating some, so he had intended to call upon the other archangels to deal with the matter, but Cockabeel convinced him that this was the only chance he had to find out if he had a daughter, and a daughter for a human was less heinous than a daughter for a demon. Sariel was convinced, and then, when the Peri began to ask him to teach them, and then humans asked the same, Sariel was enticed by Cockabeel to take pride in his ability to teach, and when the students begged for more secrets, he enthusiastically gave them his greatest. Then, some time later, when a human female died in childbirth, and the Nephilim child that died was halted at the gates of heaven, the other angels became aware of what was happening. The Almighty's wrath fell upon those he titled the Watchers, even those like Sariel, who had not lusted, were punished for their lust for admiration, and all of them had their wings stripped, demoting them to a title that in later centuries would be declared saviours. The Watchers were banished to wander around the fringes of mankind and the wastes of purgatory, but Azazel, the ringleader, was strung up by a leg and left to dangle between heaven and hell until he swore fealty to Lucifer. Sariel's wings were ripped from him, and he was stripped of heavenly garb and gift, and given only an item to represent their greatest sin, and cloaks of grey to cover their shameful forms. Then the Almighty purged the spawn of these Watchers through the great flood, and when the waters fell, Sariel found himself a home in the growing wastes of the Sahara, reading his Book of the Moon and cursing his pride. However, he was not abandoned at first. The faithful Peri would come to the Watchers, some of them whom were their fathers, and they would seek the wisdom they could give. Sariel still had many students, and amongst them his potential daughter, Nilufer. He taught them to do their best for mankind and guide them to purity, so they would not be left in the waste of eternity like him. Uriel watched over Sariel, and in turn Sariel would seek out his fellow Watchers, soothe their misery, and encourage them to repent and return to the path of penance and humility. For this, he is unknowingly nicknamed the Angel of the Fallen, or the Lost Ones among their kin. Sariel would forever wander the deserts unless summoned by those of pure intention or his Peri students to share wisdom. Now, just some final comments on this. As you can see, I've kept Sariel a Watcher and a Fallen, but I've made him just a tad less naughty than the other Watchers, and more like a wandering hermit. For an ambiguous angel like this one, I feel I found a decent medium for my work, and though he comes across as a bit emotionless in the story at first, we later understand his reasoning, and hopefully, if you get a chance to read Fragrance of Paradise, you may enjoy this character. Thank you for listening.